Last time I spent a few days in northeast Montana exploring Idaho and Canada before heading south into the Nez Perce. I am just southeast of Lewiston, headed to Elk City, and I figured it's getting kind of dark. I'm leaking oil like a sieve because I've been running it pretty hard today and long, and so I decided to slow the drip a little bit and overnight here at a rest area that is also a service station. It's kind of interesting. The sign says rest area courtesy of Nez Perce tribe. So I am on the Nez Perce Indian Reservation. And this is a pretty cool spot. It's top of a pass. I would say the pass is probably 3,000 feet up from Lewiston, which was maybe 1,000, 1,500 feet. So I think we're probably 4,000, 5,000 feet, maybe even higher than that. But just outside of Winchester on the way to Elk City. But lots of activity going on here. But I'm hoping later on maybe to see some elk crossing the road. I asked about elk up here, and the one of the employees who was also a previous owner, he said years ago you'd see them crossing the road all the time. So maybe we'll see some elk and some deer tonight. It's a great location. Lots of I don't know what this is. It's wheat or alfalfa or something growing in the fields up here. We're in the middle of Wheat City, that's for sure. Anyway, just an interesting update about an overnight spot. My overnight on the Nez Perce Reservation at the truck stop was on top of the Columbia Plateau. And I realized that I'd crawled up from the Snake River out of Lewiston on the border of Idaho and Washington State. I knew that I was climbing up, but I wasn't really expecting the dramatic descent down into another canyon like I am doing now. At the time I turned onto this river road, I had no idea I had another 50 miles to go just to get to Elk City, but I enjoyed every minute of it. I had a singular purpose to visit Elk City, which was camping and exploring the Magruder Corridor. My goal was to cross this iconic patch of wilderness in one day and return at the end of the day. But rather than take it in one go, I decided to scout out this challenge before my actual attempt. Lucky for me, the corridor was absolutely littered with lookouts, and this one in particular, I believe, was a rental. In other words, for $40, $50 a night, you could rent the fire tower to stay and camp in. I am at the Green Mountain Lookout on the Magruder / Nez Perce Trail. The Magruder Trail is what I'm here to tackle. I'm kind of a little bit confused. I think one side is the Nez Perce Trail, and then Magruder is the whole thing. I don't know. All I know is this. It's another beautiful day. It's real hazy and smoky in the distance. Obviously, there's a fire somewhere to the west of us. It's just kind of hard to tell exactly where it's coming from. It's been kind of smoking on and off. Some days it's worse. I think this is about as bad as I've seen it. I mean, not that it's really that bad. It looks like this in Alabama, in the south every day. So you can't see more than 20 miles on a hazy, humid day, and that's kind of what it looks like here. But out here, you can see for 75, 80 miles on good days. Unfortunately, it's not one of those days. Not even a third of the way across the corridor, I was starting to get a feel of what to expect for my full day crossing when I ran into this guy, Sam, at Poet Creek,
and he was camping and crossing and wanted to ride along. So I said, sure. Turns out Sam rode a little bit slower than I was hoping to, even though I was being very casual. He was a good bit slower than I enjoyed riding. But nevertheless, I stopped at the next big lookout, Burnt Knob, and waited on him. And I think he was even holding up some other motorcyclists. But I talked him into riding up to Burnt Knob because that's what I do. I'm a lookout guy. There were quite a few warnings on the road up to make sure that you knew that this was not an easy road. It's very steep and pretty doggone rough. Probably some of the roughest riding I've been on the whole corridor. But I didn't realize how much trouble I was in until I rode up behind Sam. And at one point up here, he runs into what I call a spear, a down tree that's kind of sticking out into the road, grabs a hold of his bag and knocks him off of his bike. But as a result of the spill, it was a low-speed spill, no big deal, but the spill actually caused him to break his clutch lever, which is a bit perilous in this part of the world. But I also said, I'll follow you out and make sure you're not having any trouble. He was going east, and I was going a bit further east, but I actually talked him into going ahead and on back because it looked like he was struggling a little bit on this section of the road. And I told him I would catch up with him, so I got the opportunity to experience Burnt Knob Lookout, and he got to keep traveling. And turns out I never did catch up with him after I left here, but at least I made the attempt. And obviously he was making good time, but the spill is coming up here shortly, and I mean, lucky for him and me, it was a low speed spill, but you can see that spear sticking out right here, and he goes right into it, knocks him off his bike, breaks the clutch lever, which makes it very difficult to operate your clutch. You really have to think ahead, and you can see this is a lot more rugged. I mean, I'm even having trouble here, but I got up to the very top, and it was just spectacular. And I spent a few minutes up there shooting some video and taking pictures and doing what I do at fire towers. And you can see this is quite unusual. It's perched on top of a rock, on top of a mountain. This is the only one I've ever seen like this, and it was quite old and dilapidated, and I don't even think this was a rental, because I'm not sure how you would be able to rent something that's this unsafe. But the view was spectacular.
This is by far the coolest lookout fire tower I have seen. This is Burnt Knob on the Magruder Trail, and I didn't expect anything that's perched on top of a pile of freaking rocks like this. This is just completely badass. Doesn't have a walk around, but I bet it probably did at one time, and it just started kind of falling apart, and it's so rugged getting up here that they probably just gave up. I bet they drove a mule team up here back in the 20s or the teens, or whenever the hell they built the first one. This may be the first one. Holy shit, there's a lake down there. Burnt Knob Lakes, I think, is what they call that. Yep, there's a couple more than two. I wonder what kind of fish are in there. I wonder if this thing's gonna collapse under. Oh wait, ooh, wow, that's kind of a scary. Oh shit, there's all kinds of ants, termites. There are termites walking around like ants. Yeah, I think this place has seen its better day. Wow. I'm not even sure I want to go in here. But it's cool as fuck. Cool as fuck. Wow. Yeah, going down now may be the hard part. I guess these are skeeters up here too. Wow, I better get down before they eat me up. My new spontaneous riding buddy, Sam, I probably mistakenly encouraged him to take this trail up. It's a little bit more rugged than probably he's used to. And I call them spears. They're tree limbs or trees or things that have fallen onto the trails that are sticking out that will spear you as you go by. And I'm usually quite aware of them. I think he probably saw this, but his bags clipped one of them and pushed him down. He was going pretty slow. I mean, I think he's probably only going 5 miles an hour. It could have been really bad if he'd have been going any faster than that. But he clipped it with his bag and went down and broke his clutch lever. So I'm kind of feeling guilty about spending any more time up here. I told him I'd come back down and check on him. And
after about 20 minutes of enjoying my very unique fire tower and lookout, I decided to mosey back down and check on my new buddy Sam and make sure he was making it and not having trouble. I could actually have ridden his bike out for him and let him ride mine. So I was a bit concerned, but also with his slow pace, I figured I could actually catch up with him. So that's what I attempted to do on my way back down. But you can see this, it's just actually pretty steep. It's kind of hard to tell here. It's steep and rugged and maintained for 4x4 only. I did see a pickup truck coming up this the next time I came up on my attempt. I was impressed by the guy and just a regular 2-wheel drive pickup getting up that. But anyway, as fast as I could go to try to catch up with Sam, I never saw him again, so I've just got to assume that he made it. And I only went about halfway anyway. I wasn't really prepared to go all the way today. I didn't have enough water, didn't have enough daylight, so I got about halfway out and turned around. And but you can see the place is just amazing. There's so much fire damage, but the place is beautiful. With these burnt trees, you can see for miles and miles. If there were stands of trees 50 years old, you couldn't see anything but dirt road in front of you. So it was, when I first came out, it was a bit depressing to see the burn, but it was years of progressive burns. You know, there was 5-year burns, 10-year burns, 20-year burns, and the trees grow back. And I came to learn that this is just part of nature, and this is how nature operates. So as sad as it may be to look at burnt wood and forest, you get over it quickly.
You gotta conserve everything I just mentioned, and especially your focus of attention. I mean, if you lose that in the first hour, the rest of the day it can be deadly. You know, you can't make mistakes on some single track piece of shit out there. Hell, you can't really make a lot of mistakes out here. You get a lot more room on the road to make different decisions. You can have, several different paths around obstacles out here, but your margin of error, well, some of this shit, like I'm fixing to hit, this freaking, you gotta be on your game when you come into this corner. You can't just be asleep and go, whoa, because it'll put you at least on your ass, and maybe out in the woods where nobody can find you. And it's all about finding my dead body when it comes down to it. So I'm at the location of an old fire tower, but all I can find are looks like some foundation remnants, and the weather's getting really sketchy. It's cold as shit up here, and I can't think of the name of the the fire tower even. But it's beautiful up here. But the rain that I was expecting and hoping for looks like it's arrived, and I have nothing. I've just got mesh gear on. That's all I've got. Underwear, mesh gear. So I think I'm either gonna turn right at the bottom of the hill and go, well, geez, it looks like it's getting worse that way. That's the direction I came from, and that's all rain right there. That's looks more like smoke, but that's rain, and I would have to head back into that to get back to where I came from. Or I can head that way, which looks even worse, to a place called McKay Bar. I think it's another town like Dixie. I just rode through Dixie. Well, maybe Dixie's the answer. Dixie's a lot closer, and there's places there that are empty, and I can get under shelter there. So maybe I'm just gonna head back to the Dixie Guard Station. It's a whole village that's kind of abandoned in the non-burning fire season, and hopefully I don't get too wet before I get there. So it started raining pretty good up there on the fire tower. But one of the missions today, I forgot to mention, one of the missions, that's some lightning, ain't it? And I'm on top of a ridge. I was on top of a mountain earlier, and it was fairly bald, and that's the other reason I split it. You know, there was no shelter, number one, and number two, I was a prime candidate for a lightning strike. But what a great day. The greatest part is I got a tip from Sam, the buddy I met yesterday. I said I'm in search of huckleberries. I have yet to be able to find any on my own. I've seen people picking them, and I didn't want to invade their patch. But that was in Montana. I have yet to see any huckleberries in Idaho. In fact, I went up into Canada, and the lady said they just aren't there. Nobody can find them. They don't have any huckleberries up there. So she had every fruit stand up there. She had every fruit available in the Rockies except huckleberries. So the most interesting thing about huckleberries is they're going for $50 a gallon. They grow wild all over the place. It's just I haven't been able to find the spot yet. The spot where, you know, it's not a handful of huckleberries. I want to fill up a Ziploc bag and make some huckleberry pancakes, and maybe throw some on some trout, and maybe even try a few more recipes. But huckleberries are big here, and my buddy Sam said go to McKay Bar. He said it was just outside of Dixie, but it's way outside of Dixie on the other side, and I think I made it about 10 miles from McKay. But on my way back to find shelter in the Dixie Guard Station, I found a patch of huckleberries, and it looks like they're on both sides of the road. But I'm gonna pick the shit out of these huckleberries before I get wet. Let me give you some close-up of what they actually look like. I've never seen them this close to the road. Usually they're up on a hillside. And that's what huckleberries look like. After about 30 minutes of picking, it's a little bit harder than I thought. The fruits don't come off as easily as you'd think, and they're very small. The key I think I have found is to find big, plentiful bushes rather than the ones that have, 10, 15 of them. Try to find the ones that have 50 of them. That way you can just pick with both hands, put your sack down, and just drop them in the sack when you get done. But after about 30 minutes of picking, I got about a cupful. I'm guessing that's why huckleberries are so expensive, because they are difficult to pick. I mean, I'm sure it's probably not as bad as picking cotton, but... The following morning, I started my day with huckleberry pancakes, which were outstanding and were a key success factor for the Magruder Corridor. So join me next time as I cross the entire rugged
Magruder Corridor, almost 300 miles in one day.